Good afternoon, dear students. Yesterday we discussed about production of wine, various steps involved in production of wine, the preparation of grape juice, then fermentation, primary fermentation, secondary fermentation, storing, aging, volatile acidity and all. So let us discuss today about the microbiology of wine production. When we crush the grapes and prepare the grape juice, a variety of microorganisms are present on the surface of the grapes, including yeast as well as bacteria. Not only just yeast and bacteria, but flora of grapes, flora of soil, okay, an array, a group of contaminants from soil are also present on the grapes. Okay, when we are preparing a grape juice. So to suppress the growth, to inhibit the growth of all these contaminating unwanted microorganisms, winemakers add sulfur dioxide or potassium metabisulfite, or less commonly pasteurize the must. Okay, so to suppress the growth of these organisms, winemakers add sulfur dioxide or potassium metabisulfite, or less commonly they pasteurize the must. Okay, now during primary fermentation, what happens? Growth of yeast is favored, right? Growth of yeast is favored because we aerate the must. Okay, during primary fermentation, the added microorganisms predominate because during early stages, when we aerate the must, when we mix the must, the aeration helps in the growth of the yeast. Later on, when mixing and aeration is stopped, anaerobic conditions are created and they favor alcoholic fermentation, during which CO2 and alcohol are produced. So both alcohol and CO2 help in preventing the growth of contaminating microorganisms. During secondary fermentation, an atmosphere of CO2 is present above the wine, which prevents the growth of aerobic contaminating microorganisms like acetic acid bacteria. If pasteurization is done, then it reduces the number of microorganisms which can cause the spoilage of wine later on. Okay, so sometimes pasteurization is also practiced, or even the atmosphere of CO2 will help in preventing the growth of microbes. Now, there should be little or no growth of organism during storage or aging of wine. The organisms which may grow in later stages might be introduced. Okay, see, during storage, during aging, there should be no growth of organism, but if microorganisms grow in later stages, they may be introduced due to contamination of tanks or barrels or bottles, or changes that may take place during the process of aging, like malolactic acid fermentation. Okay, hence strict aseptic condition should be maintained during all the steps of wine making. Now, what are the different factors that affect the growth of microorganisms? That is acidic pH. pH needs to be maintained in proper range, otherwise contaminating bacteria will grow. Then the sugar contents, most of the sugar gets fermented and there should be little or no sugar actually. Okay, the concentration of alcohol, the tannin, the accessory growth substances, all these favor the growth of microorganism. And alcohol, the proper amount of alcohol that is generated during fermentation will itself inhibit the growth of contaminating microbes. Temperature of storage has to be maintained properly, and availability of air. There should be no air available. Okay, there should be no air gap or air in the finished product, because air, you can say, activates the growth of acetic acid bacteria. So there should be no air. So availability of air, temperature of storage, concentration of alcohol, tannins and accessory growth factors, sugar content, acidic pH, all these things need to be carefully controlled so that contaminating microorganisms do not grow in the finished product. Now let us discuss about the different types of wines. Now there are variety of wines and they differ in so many characteristics. Okay, but see, there are so many types of wine and they differ in so many characteristics that it is difficult to classify them. Still, wines are classified depend on various criterias. Okay, so what are the different types of wines and how they are classified on different criterias? First criteria is according to color. According to color, wine is classified into two basic types, red wine and white wine. So the type of wine first, according to color is red wine and white wine. Red wine are made from black or purple variety of grapes that are directly crushed without removing the skin or seeds. Why? To extract the color. Okay, so red wine is made from black or purple grapes. The grapes are directly crushed. The seeds and skin is not removed because skin is needed to extract the color. They contain almost 11 to 12% of alcohol. White wine again they are colorless and made from green grapes, and while making white wine and while crushing the grape, the skin and seeds are removed. We don't want any color, so it's colorless. It also contains 11 to 12% of alcohol. Now, second criteria, on the basis of sugar concentration present in wines. Wines are classified as dry wine. Dry wines are those which do not contain any sugar, or they contain so little sugar that it cannot be detected by taste. So dry wines without any sugar, or it's so less that it cannot be detected by taste. Sweet wines are those which contain higher sugar concentration. Okay, so comparatively high sugar concentration is present in sweet wine. Okay, so dry wines, sugar is so less that not detectable by taste, and sweet wines are sweet because they contain high concentration of sugar. The third criteria for classifying wines is on the basis of CO2 content. Okay, on the basis of carbon dioxide content present in the wine, they are classified as sparkling wines and still wines. Sparkling wines contain carbon dioxide in them. They are made effervescent in a closed container. Okay, CO2 is bubbled into the wine. They are made effervescent in a closed container, and it contains 11 to 12% of alcohol. So they have CO2 in them, the atmosphere of CO2. They are made effervescent by adding CO2 in them. For example, champagne, pink or gold champagne. Then the next is still wines. Still wines are those which do not contain carbon dioxide in them. So still wines, sparkling wines contain CO2 in them. Effervescent, they are effervescent. They are made effervescent by adding CO2. Still wines are those which do not contain CO2. Okay. So on the next, fortified wines. Fortified wines are those which contain added alcohol in the form of brandy in them. What are fortified wines? They are fortified, means they are the alcohol concentration is more. And how it is more? Fortified wines contain added alcohol. Alcohol is added to them in the form of brandy. The next category of wine is sherry. Sherry is also called as French dry sherry because it is most popular in France. And sherry is a desert wine whose ethanol concentration is 19 to 21%. 19 to 21% by volume. And how this much of alcohol? Again, by fortification. And it is made from ripe and dried grapes. Okay, so sherry is made from ripe dried grapes which contain very high sugar concentration. Sometimes the grapes that are infected with the organism Botrytis cinerea are selected for sherry production. Okay, so sherry is a desert wine containing 19 to 21% by volume of alcohol, and this high alcohol is obtained by fortification, and it is prepared from ripe and dried grapes containing high sugar concentration, and sometimes especially grapes infected with Botrytis cinerea are selected for sherry production. Now, according to the desired type, it contains various concentration of sucrose in it. Sherry contains various concentration of sucrose in it. And these wines have a characteristic fine aroma. And because it is very popular in France, it is called as French dry sherry. Okay, so what are the different types of wine? According to color, red wine, white wine. According to the concentration of sugar, okay, sweet wines and dry wines. Then on the basis of CO2 content, sparkling wines and still wines. Then fortified wines which contain added alcohol in them. Sherry, it's a desert wine made from special type of grapes which are ripe and dried containing high sugar, or sometimes infected with Botrytis cinerea. It is also called as French dry sherry because it's very popular in France. So that is all about wine preparation and types of wine.